Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss how the next 72 hours are going to be crucial for Rishi Sunak, and absolutely everything is stacked against him. You see this? This is popcorn. You're going to need a lot of it in the next few days. Oh, you think you've already got plenty in? Yeah, you don't. You need more, as I shall explain. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So everything is set up for Sunak's imminent downfall. Doesn't mean he will fall this week. That is up to the balance of opinion amongst Conservative MPs. But it is all set up. Let's go over the position Sunak finds himself in, and then the challenges that he faces both tomorrow and Tuesday, which he seems very poorly prepared to navigate. First, the position Sunak finds himself in, as I've said before, is pretty much the same position Theresa May found herself in with the Brexit withdrawal agreement. May tried to get a deal which would appease the right of her party, but one that was not completely insane. She came up with a policy to appease the far right, and the far right refused to support it. May was left blaming Labour for not supporting it. So now look at Sunak. As with May, he's had to make a policy that he doesn't want to be the main policy of his entire government. He has done so to appease the right of the party. Now, until the vote on Tuesday, we can't be sure that the right of the party won't support it, but we are getting the strongest possible impression that they won't. Even before the vote, Sunak is already trying to blame Labour for not supporting a policy that has little public support and is dead against what Labour want. The Sunday Express, the Tory client media amongst Tory client media, has this excuse plastered all over their front page today. The ERG have assembled their so-called star chamber of alleged legal experts and pronounced that Sunak's Rwanda bill does not meet their tests. This is, of course, of no surprise because nothing ever meets their tests. The one time they said a policy met their tests, Boris Johnson's altered withdrawal agreement, it was on the private understanding that Johnson would renege on the deal once we'd left the EU. So just as the DUP are known as the No Party in Northern Ireland, the ERG are much the same sort of creature within the Conservative Party. However, the ERG are not the force they were when May was in office. They tried to sink Sunak's Windsor framework earlier this year, and not only did Tory MPs not block the agreement, but more than half of the ERG's own membership supported it. So, what the Star Chamber says is of way less consequence these days. However, given that other factions on the right have their own reasons for opposing this bill in its current form at least, those extra MPs opposing him could well make the difference on Tuesday. Sunak, just like his predecessors, and May in particular, has forced himself into a position whereby he has to get a particular bill through Parliament, one that doesn't really have the support of Parliament. Otherwise, his entire government is stuck in the mud. If you look at the YouGov top issues tracker, for Conservative voters, immigration and asylum are the top issue. That's it. Above everything else, above the economy, above healthcare, it's the number one issue. This is specifically for 2019 Conservative voters. So, and of course they think it's the top issue because the Tory media keep banging on about nothing else. And Sunak has foolishly tried to avoid talking about other policy areas because they're a disaster area. He doesn't want to really talk about the economy because it's a disaster area. Doesn't want to talk about healthcare. The NHS waiting lists are going up. Doesn't even want to talk about defence. So because he doesn't really want to talk about any policy areas, he's allowed the narrative to be set by others. This small, unworkable policy for this small contributor of overall migration levels is now not just the number one issue for his government, the only issue for his government. It's like the be-all and end-all. If he cannot get this bill passed on Tuesday, what does he do then? He can't afford to say, oh, well, we'll have to leave it now, I couldn't get it through. As far as anyone is concerned within the party, there are no other policies of note. So this is it. This is the one. Sunak is in an incredibly weak position, and it may well get weaker because before he has to worry about the vote on Tuesday, Sunak is facing the COVID inquiry tomorrow. Now, in many ways, he'll be facing very similar questions to Boris Johnson about policy and where his WhatsApp messages have gone. But Sunak faces two disadvantages that Johnson did not. First, the media were sort of covering for Johnson in a way that they may not be motivated to do for Sunak. Also, it was much easier to cover for Johnson last week because the main news was the current government imploding, not the previous government being asked about something that happened a few years ago. So Rishi Sunak right now is the news. So it's much more likely that there will be coverage of Sunak's evidence at the inquiry tomorrow. But his second disadvantage is that he's very, very bad at cross-examination. Johnson doesn't fool people who are able and willing to critically consider his responses, but he lies so confidently and so effortlessly that he persuades those not paying attention that he's just answering questions in a perfectly reasonable way. This will not be the case for Sunak. He will be awkward. Like most people, his brain will rebel against some of the nonsense that Johnson had to come out with. He will be questioned by a top barrister. I said that before. His decision to avoid difficult questions in the past is going to bite him on the arse. I said, never mind the inquiry. I said, come the general election campaign, he is going to be right under the spotlight like never before. I said he should have been getting out and doing proper public meetings, not the safe, sanitised versions he's been doing to try and pretend he's been talking to the public. No, he should have gone out and he would have faced bruising encounters. He'd have come off and it would have been very bad, but he'd have learned, he'd have developed skills in dealing with hostile questioning. But he failed to do so. He hid away. He avoided all that. And now he is completely unprepared for any level of genuinely critical questioning. It may well be that he gets away with tomorrow. It may be that the media focus on the Tory rebellion, not the inquiry, for fear of people finding related articles maybe on Johnson's performance last week. I don't know. But because Sunak was negligent in 2020, just as Johnson was, and because Sunak has no idea how to deal with tough questions, there is the very real risk that he does a Richard Nixon and says something that drops him further in the shit. And throughout the rest of today and tomorrow, we're going to see various Tory groups on manoeuvres. Sunak and his allies and party whips are desperately trying to get the numbers they need to get this second reading passed on Tuesday. It's all very well trying to put pressure on Labour, but Keir Starmer's just sat back laughing at Sunak. Starmer's main problem is how to prepare for PMQs this Wednesday. After all, there's a credible risk that Sunak gets the tap on the shoulder during Wednesday morning. And that is because the vote on Tuesday is all important. Remember the crucial vote for Liz Truss somehow ended up being on fracking. That was a bloody affair. That was a mess. Next day she resigned. Now I could talk about how there will be a difference between losing narrowly and losing by a big margin, and absolutely there's a huge difference between those. But if the vote is lost on Tuesday by any margin, Sunak has to either immediately come back with an alternative plan to get the Rwanda scheme working. He either needs something else he can put to Parliament in the new year, or he has to say that the planes will not be taken off before the election. And because the Conservatives have allowed this brainless scheme to be their defining policy through a combination of deliberate political vandalism and stupidity from within their ranks, that will mean that Sunak's government has lost its power. In power, but not with power, as they say. Now, I don't want to talk as if it's inevitable that Sunak loses this vote. It may be that there are enough Tory MPs frightened of the consequences that decide they don't want the bill to fail, at least not yet, because they get another shot. There would still be another vote on it anyway. If it passes this Tuesday, there's a third reading, they get another vote. The idea of the vote at the second reading is to try and amend the bill in order to make it palatable to a majority of MPs. But if the bill is defeated this Tuesday, it's sort of a sign that there's enough MPs have decided that enough's enough. And the thing is as well, it doesn't even need like anything close to a majority of Tory MPs, because the vast majority of the opposition will vote against it. It potentially only needs 1 in every 8 Tory MPs to sink it. That's the party over. Sunak has lost his authority to get headline legislation through the House. There are only 2 options at this point. I suppose 3. I suppose you could have the option that the party, because let's say only 1 in 8 Tory MPs vote against it and 7 in 8 vote with it, and it sort of narrowly is lost. It could be that there is a clear majority of the House or the party, I should say, that doesn't want Sunak to fall yet, and they prop him up. They prop him up, and and they try and get him to limp through another few months. That is one possibility, sure. But generally speaking, your main options are call an election with the intention of making their campaign about the Rwanda scheme. Accept, just as they did in 2019, that there's no parliamentary majority for this particular bill. So you need a different parliament. So you go to the election, you say, look, we're going to campaign on this issue so that we then do get a majority who will say we will support this scheme. Your second option is to change the leader in the hope that a different leader will find a way to change the plan in a way which can attract support. Both of these ideas are utterly insane if you're a Tory MP, which is why Sunak does stand a chance of getting a lot of support for his bill, not necessarily because they approve of the bill, but because they really don't want either an election or change of leader right now. But as I say, it only takes, in theory, 30 Tory MPs to block the bill and throw the government into chaos. Realistically, it would take more than that. You're probably talking 40 to 50, because there'll be the odd bit of support on the opposition benches. Maybe the odd DUP MP does Sunak a solid. Maybe some former Tory MPs who have lost the whip, now independents, they'll vote for Sunak. But it's still a small minority of Tory MPs needed to sink this bill. There are reputed to be about 115-ish Tory MPs that you could consider on the right of the party. They're spread across various factions. They don't always agree with each other. But these are the MPs who want to start weakening our human rights laws. It would maybe only take about a third of them voting against the bill to block it and potentially bring Sunak down. In fact, it would probably take fewer MPs to bring Sunak down with this vote than is needed to force a confidence vote. Rishi Sunak has made a grievous error in allowing himself to be put in this position, and it is a sign of just how crap his advisors are that they allowed it. Like, I don't talk to Tory MPs like national media correspondents do, but you just look at everything and you see this is all set up for 72 hours of very high drama within the Tory party. There will be more skirmishes today, no doubt. There will be eyes on his performance at the COVID inquiry tomorrow. The debate on the Rwanda bill, regardless of the result, will be incredibly ugly for the Tories. And the vote could be ruinous. Indeed, I expect it to be bad. I just don't know how bad. For Sunak, not necessarily for the rest of us. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.